Hello, everyone, and welcome. While we don't have any hard confirmation around the date, if the rumors in the preseason countdown are to be believed, preseason 1 of Dark and Darker will wrap in 8 days, on or around the 22nd of February 2024, at least in the Western Hemisphere. It's reasonable to think that we'll get a wipe and the start of Season 2 immediately afterwards. I'd like to take a moment to reflect on this, the season retrospective, the first season of Dark and Darker, and talk about what I'm doing in preparation for that wipe. Before we get into the meat of the Season 1 retrospective, though, I'd like to address a number of direct messages and comments I've received asking me, essentially, to continue to criticize what's going wrong with Dark and Darker in an attempt to, hector Iron Mace towards changes you, the player, or you, the community, would like to see. It's pretty simple here, folks. I think that we all have enough negativity in our lives, and I'm not really interested in using my free time or this channel to negatively impact the game or to rile up the community to score easy points. If you listen to my words in last week's video, Iron Mace, This Is the Way, that criticism was framed in a constructive way and from a place of love and appreciation for this game and the work that goes into it. Will I continue to be fair and measured in my criticisms? I will. Will I attempt to steer this young company towards best practices, which I can confidently say will improve both the product and the lives of the developers? I will. But enough of that. Let's talk about Preseason 1. I think the headline for Preseason 1 is likely striking the right balance between PvE and PvP in the ranked reward system. During the season, we've seen a lot of experimentation with the AP system, the reward values, the gear values, the kill values, etc. We've also seen a great deal of unexpected, emergent player behaviors that these changes have incentivized. In the broadest sense, people want to hit Demigod, and the easiest way to do that in Season 1 was to avoid PvP at all costs while teaming up with other players in the lobby for safety, for shared wealth, and for bossing opportunity, particularly in solos. The outcomes that this system ultimately rendered was a little bit wonky and a tad bit perverse. Firstly, if you hit Demigod last season, congrats to you. I'm not trying to undermine your accomplishment, I'm simply talking about the direction I would take this system moving forward. If you hit Demigod this season by playing smart and taking the path of least resistance, you likely did it by taking as few PvP fights as possible and grinding out runes, level 1 and level 2 for maximum efficiency, crouch spamming strangers to make friends. It was a pretty long and honestly pretty boring grind through the Dark and Darker PvE experience. If, on the other hand, you hit Demigod this season by continuing the PvP first, ask questions later approach, you achieved this rank in likely the hardest way possible. If you did it as a solo wizard, then my god, mad respect. To do this, you often had to take on the whole lobby, with each failure being a substantial setback from an AP points perspective. When you had a great run, you often picked up 2 or 3 player kills in a single raid, but then had to agonize over taking the kits and gear upgrades instead of the treasures which would advance your rank in your climb. The net result from my perspective was that folks who played nice and PvE'd well had a fairly straightforward glide path to Demigod. It was really a test of endurance in your ability to consistently PvE well, and then to invest the time necessary to hit your goal. If, on the other hand, you took the PvP path, well, your results will likely vary. I think the most common result would be to end up treading water naturally somewhere between the blue and purple rank, mostly due to the volatility of the PvP playstyle. More aggressive playstyles are inherently exposing you to more risk. The reward wasn't calibrated to the risk in Season 1, full stop. Thus, the natural tendency was this: if you played the friendly playstyle, the grind got easier as you gained ranks, as you found more like-minded people who were there with a singleness of purpose, not to fight, but instead to maximize their AP gain. If you played a more hostile playstyle, the proposition got inherently and significantly more challenging for each rank you gained past green. I mentioned earlier that we have some kind of perverse outcomes and perverse incentives in this season, and I'd like to discuss that for a moment. At the end of the day, I trust Iron Mace's creative vision, so I'm happy to play inside of whatever parameters they want to define for their game's highest accomplishments, Demigod, our titles, and our brackets. With that said, what do you think hitting Demigod should mean? Is it the reward for being the best PvPer? Is it a title for those who have the best map knowledge, the highest luck scores, and the better personalities over VoIP? I think it's a little bit of all of this, but I do have a few points to contribute that I would like you to think about and discuss. If you accept as a given that player rank will be the primary criteria in the game's matchmaking formula, there is little to no value in matchmaking players of equal skill together for the purposes of clearing PvE content. Conversely, matchmaking has a great deal of value to the game for taking PvP players and finding them worthy opponents of near equal skill. This serves two important functions. First, players of roughly equal PvP skill will end up in games together and, by virtue of that, have better fights, or at least closer fights from a skill versus skill perspective. Secondly, players with a greater PvP ability will no longer linger in lower ranks where they don't belong, preying on new or less effective or less skilled players for long periods of time. They will quickly rise to a rank commensurate with their ability. To close out my thoughts on this, I'd like you to consider this thought experiment. Making the number of kills you get in a match a multiplier for your AP point reward for that run. I think this change leans heavily into the risk versus reward equation inherent in taking fights in general, but also addresses the kind of natural volatility you have in a PvP playstyle. I think it will smooth out the progression curve, but the end result will be players arriving at a rank equilibrium dictated by their ability to fight, not their ability to loot, and not their abilities to make friends. Ratting your way to high ranks would still be viable. It would just be more difficult. It would greatly increase the jeopardy in attempting to make friends with strangers in lobbies and increase the potential rewards for the acts of betrayal. All of this feels super healthy for a game like this. As always, this is just my thinking and a jumping off point for discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these ideas and this season. Please leave them in the comments section below. The last time we heard about player demographics in Dark and Darker, the numbers were about 50% of the player base playing High Roller and about 50% of the player base playing in the White Gear lobbies. I'd love to see a shakeup in these numbers, which brings me to kind of my final point. What am I doing right now to prepare for wipe? Well, I am taking each of my characters and ranking them to at least green rank in High Roller lobbies. Green rank is pretty attainable. It's pretty easy to hit with a minimal time investment, and the rewards are going to be amazing for fast-tracking your post-wipe efforts. Each character you hit green rank with will start next season with 15 bandages, 15 healing pots, 500 gold, and 1 gold pouch with a capacity of 1,000 gold pieces. Assuming that you have the time and the characters, if you combine these rewards like on a single character at the start of next wipe, that character will be starting off with 120 healing pots, 120 bandages, 4,000 gold, and an additional 8,000 gold of potential storage capacity. That just seems like a great way to start the season, regardless of how you want to divvy it up and split it up. So for all of my friends out there who are playing normals, I highly encourage you to run some HRs this week. Take a shot at getting some of these rewards for yourself at the start of next wipe, which should be, by my calculations, sometime next week. Yes, the mobs in High Rollers, they move faster and they hit harder, but hitting that green rank is much, much easier than you think, and it will really accelerate your game after the next wipe. As always, thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It helps me a ton. Good fortune to you in your raids to come, and until next time, Koopa out.